Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw Gears 12, and today I'm talking about an album release that has been anticipated for a long time from this band ever since they released their 2010 album entitled Opus Eponymous. We are talking about Ghost's second release entitled Infestissumam or Infestissumam. I'm not exactly sure the correct saying, but it's one of those two, Infestissumam or Infestissumam. But anyways, guys, we are talking about that album today. So it's finally upon us, guys. This album is finally here, and let's just dive into it and see what happens. So the first thing that I realized and noticed about this album is that the band Ghost is kind of exploring musically what they can accomplish and what they can do, because the first album release, Opus Eponymous, was more of a testing ground to see what works and what doesn't work, and nothing on that album, was wrong. It was actually a really great release, and they really did something fresh and rejuvenating because they're doing the style of 1970s metal, and they're sticking to that kind of genre. And people say they're a gimmick band, but they basically were just going back to the style of how metal was back in the 70s and adding doom metal in that mixture as well. But with this new release, the second album, Infestissumam, however you want to pronounce it, that the band is, like I said, exploring to what works and to see what they can find, because what they did on this album was really interesting, and actually I think it worked in a great way. So the first thing that you notice right off the bat as soon as you press play on the first track, Infestissumam, the opener, that you notice that there's a choir that starts off this album, and it's very eerie, but it's also beautiful at the same time, with this huge choir just singing these words and basically just giving you the sense of like a church vibe or something like that. Now, as we all know, Ghost is not church oriented. They have very satanic lyrics if you know the band, but it was just really interesting to listen to. And throughout the whole entire album, there are moments where the choir comes in. There's actually a song that features this choir going throughout the whole entire track, which was really cool. But that's one element that really changed up the vibe of this album. Also, they've added keyboards and piano bits throughout the album as well. It's not on every single track, it's not through the whole entire album, so don't get scared like, whoa, really? There's more involvement of it, but it makes the album more of a variation, and it gives you a different vibe and gives you a different feel of how this album is, because, like I said, the band is exploring and adding different stuff to make this album a little bit more interesting and gives you more of a variety of musical style they're trying to do. So, let's go to the sound of the band, and then we'll go to the songs and talk a little bit about that. But I don't go through the full track listing. If you want to know that, that's all in the description. But the sound of the band. So, if you loved the 2010 release from this band, Opus Eponymous, then you're going to love this album as well, because the sound of the band and the sound of Papa Emeritus II, I think that's how you pronounce Papa Emeritus, is that they didn't really change their sound. And sometimes people gripe will say, well, why didn't they change it? Well, there are bands that like to change up the sound of the band, and mostly the vocalist tries to say the same, but the sound of the band, the guitar tone, bass, and drums, they like to change up from time to time on each album, just give it a little bit different sound. But for this band, I think it would probably be not a good idea to change their sound, because they're sticking to the 70s metal format and doom metal, and I think changing the sound of the guitars and the bass and the drums as well would probably give this album a different feel if they would have went in a different direction sound-wise for the guitars and bass and drums. But they stuck to the same idea of Opus Eponymous. So I think that's what made this album even more interesting, because they're still sticking to that same type of sound. So like I said, once again, if you loved Opus Eponymous for that guitar tone, that bass, and that drums, then you're going to love this album as well, because they stick to the same formula. Now, I do think that maybe the guitars sound a little bit heavier and the bass is turned up a little bit more on this album, but like I said, in a sense, it's like Opus Eponymous. It's just a little bit better production, but that's what I gotta say. The guitar tone, like Opus Eponymous, was very crisp, and it was different, and we're not used to hearing this type of sound in the 2000s, at least 2010s, and now 2013. The bass is turned up, which I love, and the fact is that the drums have that same sound and very just out there, and just basically a 1970 drum sound. That's what they're going for. The music on this album, like I said, varies more. The guitars, there's a lot more guitar moments. There's a lot more melodies, I think, on this album, because on Opus Eponymous, we had melodies, guitar solos, but in this album, it feels like that there's more into it, and I really enjoy musically what's happening here, because there's a more variation, especially on the song Ghuleh, which is Ghuleh / Zombie Queen, but mainly on this track Ghuleh. I love the piano bit that they added. I love that they added this really soft melodic piano bit that really makes the song really slow and melodic, and it stands out on the album. And I love that because it was something new that we haven't had before from this band, and I just loved the feel of that song because it just, like I said, it stands out. So musically, like I said before, and I'll say it again and I'll give you more of an idea, I really enjoyed that they kind of stuck to the same formula of what Opus Eponymous was, because that's what really made people love it, is that the music was just there, and it was very, very raw, and it was different than what we'd get from other bands that are coming out now. And they kind of stuck to that same formula, so like musically, part of it is like Opus Eponymous, and the other part of it is not, because they're exploring and they're adding some new stuff to see what works. And like I said, all these things, the choir, the synthesizers that are going out through the album, the keyboards, and also the piano bits, give it more of a variation. And I love that. I love how they're exploring, because obviously they could have explored in a different direction on this album and it would have sounded bad. But for this, it works, in my opinion. It works. So let's talk about Papa Emeritus and his vocals and his lyrics. So like I said about the sound of the band, also for him, if you love the vocals and you love how the production was on the vocals for Opus Eponymous, it's basically the same here, but I think his vocals are done a little bit better. Not his singing has gotten better. His singing is still top notch. I'm saying the production of the sound of his voice is turned up a bit, and it's definitely, you can tell that the production on this album has gotten a little bit better. But his voice is still top notch. He's still giving you these really interesting melodies. He's just giving you really great vocal lines. His lyrics are very dark and evil, like they were on Opus Eponymous, all about that Satan. But I feel like they were done very, very well, and he's just an amazing vocalist and amazing lyricist, and I gotta give praise to him and the Nameless Ghouls, because this album really showed me something of this band, like made me go, I love this band even more, because Opus Eponymous really made me go, wow, this is something different. But on Infestissumam, or Infestissumam, however you want to pronounce it, they give you something more, and it makes me want to go, what's the third album going to be like? Because, you know, if they're going to explore on the second release and basically stick to the same formula from the first album, but add some more stuff and see what the album will get to, then it's making me go, well, what is the third album going to be? What else can they add? Because it works so well here, like what else can work from this band? Who knows? Maybe they'll venture into another genre, maybe like trickle in some other genres and see what works and what doesn't work on the third release. But for this album is a great, great release. It really stands out, and I'm going to say this now, it's a contender for my top 10 of 2013. It has to be, because this album just blows me away, because obviously they could have went in another direction and it would have probably failed. They could have tried some new things besides the stuff that they did try on this album, and it could have been a major flop. It could have been like complete garbage. It could have just been bad. But this band traveled in some ways and directions and tried to do new things, and they worked out, in my opinion, in a great, great way. And so I have to give this album a 9.5 out of 10. Ghost, once again, did something amazing, and I'm glad that this band has got a huge following like it does, because they deserve it, because they're doing something new, and they're giving us something new and exciting. That's basically what it is, because obviously there's bands coming out like every week and every day playing thrash and death metal, deathcore, and all these other genres. And don't get me wrong, that's cool and all, but Ghosts are doing something unique. They're giving us the feel of the 70s heavy metal, and then adding some doom metal effects, and this unique vocal style from Papa Emeritus II. Well, that's what he is on the album, on the first one, Papa Emeritus. But his vocals are so unique, so that is great. So my final verdict, it's an amazing album. If you loved Opus Eponymous, go check this album out. And if you don't know Ghost, I recommend checking out Opus Eponymous first, and then checking out this album, because this album gives you more of a variation. So if you enjoy Opus Eponymous, check it out. And if you're new, go check out Opus Eponymous. And if you like that, I think you will like this new album as well. So that's my review. That's it, guys. So like I said, 9.5 out of 10, an amazing record. Good job, Ghost. High praise from me to you. So that's my review, guys. If you like me and you want to see more of me, click the like button and subscribe, and check out my channel if you want to know more about what I do. So thanks for watching, guys. That's my review. I'll see you guys soon.